Okay, we're resuming. Hey, thanks, Harry, for posting that. Now I'm going to become a celebrity here. All right. Hi, you're back. Me too. I was just making my my kale. I wouldn't call it a salad, but garlic and onions and kale cooked in olive. There you go. So nutritious. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to where we left off. All right. Anybody else back? Lisa's always back early. Chris, okay, there we go. Terry, you're there too? Okay, sounds good. Steve, all right, good to go. All right, so backup strategies, and these are the timing thing that we're talking about. You have to be familiar with what these things are. At the bottom, you see the RPO. Okay, so this is called the recovery point objective. Recovery point objective. And recovery point objectives are the backup strategies that you have for your company. So let's say that you are backing up the system once a day, right? Let's say at midnight you do a batch job, you back it up. And basically then you have to ask and say, okay, so you're backing up once a night. What that means then is that, your system could be running like 23 hours, and then right before the backup, it goes down. You lose everything, during the day, and the only thing you have is that backup that you made 23 and 59 minutes ago, 23 hours and 59 minutes ago. Is that good enough for you, right? So if the company says, oh yeah, no problems, we can recover from a day's worth of work, that's fine. Then, that probably is a good time for you. That will be the RPO for you. That will be the 23 hours or 24 hours. But if you say, oh no, we can't be losing any data at all, and they say, okay, so how about like 12 hours worth? No way. How about 6 hours worth? No way. Okay, so how long then? Right? So if they say good with 12 hours, well, what that means is that you do backup every, twice a day. That's what it means. Okay. So obviously the RPO is going to differ depending upon, what you need. So your company. Okay. Then let's say that's the RPO, and some people have said, well, we can't lose anything at all. Well, if that's the case, I guess you have to actually have a dual system running, don't you? Okay. Yeah. And then what happens then is, during that time, something bad happens. So you see the system failure. Okay. From there, the clock starts ticking, and the clock is what's called the MTD. So this is called the maximum tolerable downtime. Maximum tolerable downtime. And the maximum tolerable downtime is beyond which, if you're not back up, you are no longer in business. That's basically what we're saying. It's maximum tolerable downtime. So, is it a day? Is it a week? Is it a month? What, right? It depends upon your business. Then set the MTD, and you will do your recovery work within that. Because if you recover after that, it's a moot point, isn't it? Okay? So then you have the MTD, maximum tolerable downtime. And in between you have two things. You have RTO and WRT. RTO is recovery time objective. Recovery time objective. So the recovery time objective is your objective time, your target time to recover all your systems. Okay? So system recovery complete, as you see there in the book. Okay? And WRT, work recovery time. Work recovery time is where you are putting back the data into the system. So as you see on the WRT, it says testing and checking the data and systems, and then you're back to normal operations. So that's the ideal. And any planning that you do for DR, so disaster recovery planning, must take into consideration these timings. We are driven by these times. Okay? Any questions? Okay. So the technology environment is here. This is just like the surviving site type of thing. So you could have a dual data center, right? If that's the case, great. Maybe when it's running, you could just go ahead and use both. for load balancing perhaps. And when one goes down, yeah, you just switch operation all to that one site. Okay. You could have internal, external hot sites, warm sites, cold sites, mobile sites. Okay. So what is the difference? I mean, if you, let's say somebody says, hey, this is one of our backup sites. And how do you know if you are in a cold site? Let's say you get into the building, how do you know if you are in the cold site? Everything is off. No servers running. On top of that, there may be no servers. Not just running, it's not there. Right? So the cold site could be just a shell of a building. It would still be called a cold site. Okay? So you have to start putting things in into the cold site if you were to use that. So that would be the least desirable, but it'll take the most time to bring things up. So you got nothing. Warm site is something like what you were saying. Everything is off, no server running, and on top of that, you may not have all the servers or all the application. And if you have all the systems, well, the data may not be complete. So you may not have synchronized it. So there is something that you have to bring it up. And desirable is 12 hours. So if you could bring up the warm site up to snuff by 12 hours, that's pretty good enough, at least by the book. Okay? And the hot site then is like hot standby, right? It's ready. Everything is synchronized. Everything's ready to go. That's basically what a hot site is. And the mobile site is these things that moves around, okay, that you can bring up. So military has a bunch of mobile sites and stuff, so that would be an example of that. The processing and reciprocal agreements that we talked about, right? So that would be the strategies. You could outsource if you wanted to. And multiple processing sites, sure, right? These are all options of recovery site strategies. System resistance and fault tolerance. Mean time to failure, right? You basically want to know what is on the average, when are my hard disk is going to fail, and be prepared for that. So that would be really important. Trusted paths and fail secure. Okay. Remember, for the exam, as I mentioned, right, human life is priority number one for these types of items in cissp. So if they ask you, what's important in fire detection system, it's usually like human life, right? So, and fail safe, fail secure, fail open, fail close. So when they talk about fail safe, they're talking about safety, okay? Fail safe, safety, right? And in fact, there is. Let me actually show you something here. In the other goodies department. This is the slide that you have as well. So the application security references, I do have a OWASP application security slides, and they have a pretty good one on fail open, fail secure. So let's take a look at it. Let's see. Okay, so when they talk about the fail safe, hang on here. Hang on, it's almost there. Almost there. Okay, here we go. Okay, so fail close, fail open. Okay, so here we go. Fail close system block access when they run into errors. Fail open system allow access when they run into errors. Choosing which behavior should be done explicitly with care. So what they're saying is that it has to be in the requirements. Okay, and we'll see why that is. So this must be decided on case-by-case basis, as you see there. There is no one right answer because it does depend upon the situation. So then you say, okay, so how about this one? Nuclear missile launch software, fail close or fail open. Which one do you think? You have to think about it? What do you think? Fail open or fail close? Christopher, fail open? When the system fails, you want the nuclear missile launch software to be accessible? That may be a thought, right? You say, why would it be failing? Because maybe there's a nuclear strike. Well, in that case, maybe you want the button to be available. but most of the time, this would be a case, Christopher, for fail closed. Okay. Okay, Chris, does that make sense? Why would you want to open? Can you tell me why? Yeah, you don't trust it, right? Oh, ability to attack over. There you go. That's what I thought you meant. See, there you go. This is a perfect reason why we don't, we have to put that into the requirements because people have different opinions, right? How about fail close or fail open? Fire door lock control software. Open. Yeah, exactly. Human life, right? Terry, are you going to say closed? No. Okay. All right. All right. Open. How about this one? Fail closed or fail open. Credit card authorization routine. Closed. So if there's a failure, you want it closed. Is that what you mean, Terry? Okay. Well, guess what? When I asked, one of my customers is a huge retail customer, and when they saw, and I had the application developer folks for application development security, and when I showed them this, they said, I want them to fail open. And I said, why would you want to fail it open? He said, well, because if one register gets locked up, we don't want all the registers to fail, so we want them all to be open. That's what he said. So I guess it does really, it could be one or the other. And this is a perfect example of why you don't want to leave these things up to the developers to decide. You want to make sure it's in the requirement. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so, but we're talking about system failures, right? So we may not have that luxury. Yeah. Okay, so there you go. That's one of the examples. I'm just going to close this thing out. Okay, so you have this slide available to you. It's right there. Redundancy and fault tolerance, very similar. Cold spare, warm spare, hot spares. Power supplies, drives, and data storage. Right. If you go really all out, you're having a highly available, highly fault tolerant systems like Stratus. I think Stratus is still around, right? Yeah, there it is. Stratus Technologies. Highly available, fault-tolerant systems. There you go. Right, security, high tolerance. Okay, so high fault tolerance. All right, so there you go. Power supplies, drives, and storage, and RAID. Okay, so right, redundant array of inexpensive devices. That's one thing anyway. So you do need to know RAID. I do have a link for tutorials for you. This one actually gives you all the RAID levels, and if you click on one, they actually, if I like visual things, and if you click on this thing, it actually shows you a little pictures about how these data get saved, right? So they tell you where the parity goes in. So obviously for RAID 5, parity themselves are also redundant and placed into different disks. So if you lose, usually if you lose a parity disk, like in RAID 3, I mean, you can't recover if you lose another disk. But in this case, even parities are, spread out across all the disks. So make sure you know them. All right. So the next one is implement the disaster recovery process. Implement these things. Okay. Look at it. Right. So this is the disaster recovery planning, right? So it says they're restoring services from a contingent state, any type of disasters. got to document the plan, response, personnel. You have to have all these communication, like the call list that you have. You have to assess, restore, and of course, a lot of things that we do for the disaster recovery is mostly training, isn't it? Because we're always training for that real thing. Because when something does happen, we're usually in the panic mode, so we don't want, we don't want people to, to think a lot, right? Because we're not going to be thinking a lot. We have to make sure that they're in muscle memory. I did add PDCA in there, so because the book does cover a lot about maturity. So PDCA is a continual improvement cycle of plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, check, act. So you plan for something and you implement it, and you make sure you check and make sure it's working, and then if there are some discrepancies, you take actions on it, and then you repeat the whole process. Okay. Hopefully you're not repeating the same errors all the time, though. So that is the PDCA process. Okay, disaster recovery process. Testing the disaster recovery plan, right? That's what we do most of the time. So there are different types of tests, and I got this straight from your book. Tabletop exercises and structured walkthroughs. So these are the lightest type of test that you have, right? So people come together, let's say one location, all the people that are involved, and they talk about it, right? They talk about what to do. They talk about planning. They say, okay, how do we communicate with each other? What happens? So they could even do a simulation if they wanted to, right? And that would be the walkthrough drill and simulation test. Okay, so you could simulate, but still, here in a simulation test, you may go to your alternate sites because you are simulating. Maybe it's not just a desktop simulation, but you simulate by going to a place. Okay, but you're not really running through the actual the backup systems or anything like that. But for the functional drill and parallel test, you are actually bringing up the test systems maybe in these backup locations, but you are not actually bothering with the real system. It's running as normal, but behind the scenes in an exercise, you're actually bringing these systems up. And then ultimately, the most harshest test is the full interruption test and full-scale testing, where you go to the main system and you just shut it down. Boom, right? And then and you see how everything that you plan for is working or not working, where it transparently fails over to the backup system. Okay, and one of the thing that I have experienced with this is, once again, in that PCI DSS example, there was a requirement for this particular customer to do a full interruption test once a year. And the auditor said, look, okay, so I see that you have not done it. Like, when are you going to do it? And the customer said, well, we're never going to do it. And the auditor says, well, if you don't do it, then you fail, right? And he said, are you not prepared? And the customer said, yes, we are prepared, but we're not going to do it. And the auditor said, why not? You may fail. He said, well, we're going to fight this thing because we don't want to cause any issues to the customer, because just in case something might happen where the failover is not smooth, and if there is no disaster, then we can't really explain it to the customers. So they actually escalated they didn't want to do it, right? The customer did not want to do it, but eventually somebody convinced them that they had to do it, so they did. It's a good thing they did too, because what happened was, the main center was in Tokyo, the other one was in Osaka. It's about maybe a 2-hour bullet ride train. Okay, so it's pretty far away. So when they shut down the Tokyo data center and the systems that are in the Tokyo data center, it did nicely, fell over to Osaka. But there was another problem, right? What they said was, okay, now we failed over, we just passed the test, so now let's put it back to normal. So when they tried to bring it back to Tokyo, it took them a week back. Okay, so they didn't plan for that. They only planned for the failover. They didn't plan for the recovery of the site that went down. Right? You never know until you try, right? So one of the strategies that a lot of customers use is that once you've moved to the failover site, now that becomes the primary site, and then you run it. So there's another test, and then by that time, hopefully you're ready to move over to the primary site back, and then you flip it back. So that could be the strategy. But yeah, so these are the full interruption tests. And another one, so there's a new paradigm, right, for this. It's called a chaos monkey. Okay. So the Chaos Monkey, right? They call it the Simian Army. Have you heard about it? Have you heard about Chaos Monkeys with Netflix? It's a new paradigm in testing disaster recovery. Oh, you've not heard about it. Well, Chaos Monkey, and I hear nowadays it's not just a Chaos Monkey thing, but Chaos Monkey is a service which goes into the system and shuts it down randomly in chaos, right? And supposedly Netflix does this like on a daily basis. There will be a system that's going down unpredictably because there's a Chaos Monkey group. I'm sure it is some kind of program to make sure that their system is able to transparently fail over every single time, no matter what happens to the network, that they're able to bring it up. So on a daily basis, because they have these full shutdowns of systems, you know, I'm thinking, okay, when something real happens, everybody probably think it's an exercise. I guess that's the best of all worlds, isn't it? Right? You don't panic. You know you're prepared. You know it just works, right? Because you've been practicing it. Okay. Yeah. One of the reasons why Netflix probably can do this is because they're running on top of AWS, Amazon Web Services. So they do have a redundant infrastructure that is Amazon that's helping them to be able to do this. But Amazon data center have been known to go down before, so you know you can't always trust that either. So there you go. Any questions on that? Okay. So these are the tests. You have to maintain and update the plan, right? Disaster recovery plan is not something you write once and hope that it's going to work. Things change and keep on changing. So it's it's a document that is alive. Right? It's a very active document. So it's ongoing, reviewed at least every 3 months, as they say in the book. Okay, audited at least on an annual basis, and make sure you have a version control so people know what's been changed. Roles and responsibilities. Now here. The book actually switches to BCP. They talk about the BCP teams, not the DR teams. And that's where you probably kind of get the idea that, oh, okay, so BCP and DR is related in that way. Okay? Because the people that works on BCP are probably similar people that works on DR as well. Okay? It's just that the context is different now. Okay? So they talk about the BCP teams, but just know that, you know, most likely there's going to be a DR team as well. Contingency planning group develops, implements, and maintains worldwide BCP program. And usually, the BCP department, if a company has one, is pretty small. For one of the major banks American banks that I know of in Japan, had just one person as the head, and he had maybe a couple people working for him. It was like a three-man show or three-person show. But the people that they involve is company-wide. Right? They involve every department that is labeled critical, and within those departments, people that are labeled critical, and so they have to mobilize everyone in case of emergencies. Okay, BC plan is focal point, any situation, right? Planning and emergency response, right? They are the focal point, but they're not going to be able to accomplish this, you know, just by themselves. So that's why they actually talk about participating in business continuity planning and exercising. It says there, the BC and the risk. Business continuity is related to everything else. So this is also, so they kind of smoothly move into business continuity, but also for DR as well. So for example, business continuity, unlike disaster recovery, is to try to keep the business running. Okay, and when you say something like, when something happens, you know, make sure you keep all the unauthorized people out. So this will be, you know, fail, close, right? Well, who does that? Physical security. Well, does physical security come under BCP? Well, BCP group? No. But they are one of the people that must get involved. It's one of the people that are critical people. Not part of BCP department per se, but it's part of that, right? Part of the plan. How about records management? You know, getting access to what data must be recovered first. Well, the BCP department is not going to do that, but it is the actual record management folks that does that. Maybe it's HR, maybe it's admin, maybe it's legal, right? So it is part of the company. So there you go. You have to involve a lot of people. Implement and manage physical security. Okay, so this is now going into the physical security area. The perimeter security. Okay, so perimeter for the physical security, and this is something similar to what you'll probably find in the book. Okay, so there's a clear zone, 30-foot minimum, 50-foot minimum, the standoff zone. All these are in your book. Okay, so please, it's all there. The design is there for deterring, preventing, detecting, responding. Right, these are all the controls. Perimeter security. Physical security, you have these barriers, fences, gates, and walls. Okay, they will try to impede or deny, so it's a preventive measure. The book actually goes into pretty detail about all the perimeter intrusion detection devices, mostly in coordination with the fences that you have. So the infrared sensors detect heat, passive, microwave detect motion, coaxial strain sensitive cable. So they talk about putting the coax through the fences like a chain link fence, so that when someone tries to manipulate the fence, that the strain that's caused on that will be sensed and it'll be reported. The time domain refractometry systems detect alteration in radio frequency signal on cable on fences. So look, it's an electrified fence. You touch it, you change the characteristic of it. Video content analysis and motion path analysis. So these are very, very smart, closed circuit TVs that has like an artificial intelligence. I've seen one before. So it's not just taking pictures, but they can actually, if you identify in the camera, this location is hot. That is, if you have something very critical. When they see people walking around or doing some behaviors that you classify as something suspicious, it's going to report it. Also, the path analysis, motion path analysis, is where, let's say, a person comes into your room, goes out the door, and walks out. Well, let's say you have 3 cameras, maybe 4 cameras, the path. You see a person approaching the room, the person entering the room, the person leaving the room, and then the outside camera sees a person walking away from the room. For camera, it's very hard to say this is one person, because in one you're just seeing the profile of the face, maybe top of the head, and then you're seeing the the side of the face, and then you see the back side of the face, and say, look, how do we know that this is one person? So these types of cameras can actually by using computer logic, they can actually say this is one person walking in, staying in, and doing something, and then walking out. Right. So there you go. Is the software analysis of the camera images. Okay. Perimeter security, lighting. They talk about different types of lighting. Okay. So I'm going to go past this. Control. How do you permit these things? So you can have a card, proximity cards, smart cards. By the way, dumb card is the one that's not electronic. It just have information. That's it. The surveillance cameras, assessment, deterrence. Perhaps you've seen those, right? You've seen these camera monitors kind of like mounted, and they may not be real cameras. It's just there as a deterrent. You have outdoor fixed, pan, tilt, zoom, dome, IP. These are where the basic thing is that you have to identify what you're monitoring and make sure your camera has all is able to see all the sides. So in the data center, if you have a rack and if you have to mount the camera to make sure that you're surveying what happens to the rack, you got to make sure all sides of the rack from top to bottom, so people can't sneak. Sometimes the cameras are set so high that you miss the bottom part of the rack. So people can kind of sneak around it and stuff, so you have to avoid that. You have to have the coverage, full coverage. Guards, they do talk about proprietary guards, that is your internal guards or your contract guards or hybrid, okay? And they do talk about the benefit of a hybrid, that is you have some of your people in there as well as the outsourcing contractor, to avoid collusion and such, okay? It's just healthy that way. All right. Internal security, so that's once you get in to the physical building, what kind of security can you have? You still have intrusion detection inside. So they do talk about all the different types of devices that you can detect intrusion. Okay, So I guess as a minimum, you have to have escorts and visitor control, of course. Okay. All right. So please make sure that you understand these. These are just outlines for you to review. Doors, of course, door locks, turnstile, man traps. We talked about man traps. Keys, lock safes, vaults, containers, key control. Right. Key control probably is easier said than done. Had a customer that was doing a key control. The auditor said, "Okay, show me your key control. Where are all your keys?" And he pointed to the middle of the room where there was like a post and there's like a steel box that had the lock on it. And he said, all the keys are there. Okay. And the auditor said, "Okay, please open it because I want to check and audit all the keys." And he goes up to his desk and pulls a drawer and picks a key and, continues to open it and said, "Okay, so that key is not secure." Right. So it's like a cat and mouse. Right. Okay. Participate in personnel safety. So this is actually the last for this section. The personnel safety, it was actually pretty interesting reading this part. Personnel physical safety issues, privacy, travel, duress. So let's go and talk about that. So the privacy is mainly if you are, surveying. That is, if there's surveillance of people with cameras, right? There may be some privacy issues. So it's all about the individual's expectation of privacy. Okay. So in the United States, we have, if you go to banks, we expect that banks have these cameras. And, nowadays, for the banks that I go in Hawaii, they have the display so that you can see yourself, right? I mean, you know that you're being monitored. But the thing about where to put the expectation will set guideline as to where you can actually put the cameras and not be in trouble, and also where not to put the cameras, right? Well, in the book, I believe they talk about if someone were to go to China, okay, the expectation is that, do you expect restrooms to have cameras? And in the U.S., I think it's a big no-no. You don't have a camera, right, in the restroom. That's where we think we have privacy. But in China, it's not. So they're saying that, look, if people are going to these countries that the expectations are different, let them know about it. Okay, let them know. And if we have any doubts about the expectation of the people that's being monitored, put a sign up there and say, "Hey, you're being monitored." Yeah, put that CCTV in operation, right? Make sure you put that in there. And I actually had a Chinese person, Chinese American person, who actually vouched and said, "Yep, we do have cameras in our restrooms." There you go. Travel. Very hard to monitor a person, your employee, when they're traveling. Okay, it can be challenging. So conduct awareness training so that they know how to conduct themselves, especially about the expectation of privacy. Use technical controls. Right, I know some companies that when their people go to countries like China, where the surveillance is the norm, they make them carry a computer that they don't use at work. So it's completely sanitized. Nothing of any importance is there. And when they come back, they have to like scrap the and just start from zero, so they'll just clear it here. So that would be the technical control. It would be the hardware software solutions that you would use. Okay. Leverage the overseas travel tips. All the things you should know before you travel to a country. I usually use the State Department site. State Department has a pretty nice site that tells you what's happening now, type of stuff. Travel advisory. So there you go. Travel warning, travel advisories. Okay, so yeah, so if you're planning on going to North Korea, there's a warning out. The Philippines, I wonder what the problem is with the Philippines. Laos traveler alert. See there? I wonder what's the problem with the Philippines. Oh, it's a special area within the Philippines for terrorist threats, kidnappings. The island of Mindanao. Wow. It's like they've never came out of the World War II phase. Okay, so there you go. Areas, right? Certain areas in the Philippines. Okay, so that would be travel. I thought this was really interesting, this part. So they're talking about duress, right? So duress is, it's something that people do on a daily basis that could possibly have deadly consequences. So obviously people that work in the police, the fire department, they're always facing these types of situations of duress. But there are other people. The example that they bring is the bank tellers. Right? I'm not sure if bank tellers actually understand that they're putting themselves in the way of danger every day they go to work because of bank robbers, right? So what they said was in order to handle something like that, you got to train them, and the way to train them is tell them scenario stories. I thought that was really interesting. Map to asset, access, and alternatives. So what they're saying is that, look, train them and say, look, why do you think a bank robber is going to, try to hurt you? Okay, why do you think they do that? It's because you are in a path to what they want, money. Okay, so you're in that path. They probably need you to help them to get the money. Okay, so that's the story, right? And map to assets. Where's the money? Okay, and then map to access. How are they going to get there, right? And alternatives. What else can you do other than to just give them the money, right? So one would be silent alarm. Maybe you have to walk, in some kind of corridor or hallway. Maybe there are certain, alarms that you can do. And once you get into the safe to give them the money, they said something like putting like a colored balloon so that that explodes inside the bag. I actually have a better solution to that. How many of you are from Washington again now? I know some of you are from Washington State, right? I know some of you are in like Canada and California. I know some of you are there. And you know how the Washington State has a marijuana that is like, it's wide open now. It's not legal. It's not illegal anymore. Yeah, Lisa. Yeah, you're in Washington, right? So pot is legal. Well, Terry, I'm not sure if you realize this, but Hawaii, starting this year, pot is legal for medicinal purposes. Okay, and I know you think, we're so conservative, right? So I don't know what's up with that. But so what I did was I went to a briefing. I know, so slow to adopt, right? So, but they did. But anyway, so medicinal, they're starting this year. So there was a briefing for people that was interested in getting into the business. And I said, well, I'm a security person. Maybe there's some kind of security, thing that I can do. So I went. And little did I know that they were going to teach me how to grow marijuana. It's like, I've never touched the stuff. I've actually smelled it because I was an MP. But I didn't know how to grow the stuff. So what they also said, which was a major turnoff for me on this business, is that it's a cash-based business, right? So you can't use a bank because of money laundering and all that. So everything's cash, right? Then what else they told me was that, look, if you try to bring water cash to the bank that you got from this place, if the bank smells marijuana on cash, they're supposed to call the police. Did you guys know that? Did you know that if your money smells like marijuana, they're supposed to call the police? That's right. Exactly, right? So then I figured, instead of a color bomb or something, why don't we just put a marijuana-laden bag or something so that the money smells like marijuana when the robbers use it. So now the banks call the police when they try to use it. Yeah, Chris. Oh, I'm not sure. Since they only lose a few thousand per, yeah, you know what? Maybe so. Give them all they can carry. Is that the real name for it, Chris? Yeah. And customer gets injured, of course the tellers get injured, right? So yeah, go ahead and go for it. Yeah. But in your book though, that's not what they say. I got this from the book. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe it's a little off from the real life. But I thought it was interesting to come up with this called, you know, stories, right? And I think that's a great way. And they also talk about, look, bank tellers, once again, you know, when the push comes to shove, they're going to panic, and if they're panicked, make sure that you train them so that they don't really have to think and they can just react. Okay, that is it for that one. All right, so we're almost at the top of the hour, and we have 2 hours left. Okay, and I'm just going to take maybe about an hour to do the application security part. So let's take a 10-minute break, and once we come back, we will go into the final part of our domain, which is the application security. Okay? Hey, thank you, and I'll see you back in 10 minutes.